Hey there, and welcome back to our series on literature. This tutorial series is brought to you by O3 School's JAMB app. And for people just hearing about the app for the first time, the app is designed to help students make adequate preparations for examinations they have coming up. Examinations like UTME, post-UTME, WAEC, NECO, or NAPTEP, whatever exams they have coming up. O3 School's JAMB app will help you prepare adequately and you get your dream score. So the app is available for download on Play Store. You download and you activate, you have access to all the features the app has to offer. So for today, we'll be analyzing the poem The Good Morrow. The good morrow is an obsolete way of saying good morning, like good morrow, an old or obsolete, like no more in use. But that's how it's how we say good morning before. Now, The Good Morrow is a non-African poem written by English poet John Donne. The poem was written by John Donne and it was published posthumously in 1633. Now let's look at the poem. The Good Morrow is a poem about love, and the poem consists of, let's say the poem consists of 3 stanzas with 7 lines each. So each of the 3 stanzas contains 7 lines each. Let's look at stanza by stanza analysis of the poem The Good Morrow. Now, the first stanza, the poem begins with a series of rhetorical questions. The questions inquire about the state of his and his lover's lives before they met. By his now, I mean the poet persona, like that's the person being talked about in the poem, or the person they're referring to in the poem. We call it the poet persona. So when I say his, I'm referring to the poet persona. So the questions inquire about the state of his and his lover's lives before they met. So questions like, were or snorted we in the sleeper's den? Were we not weaned till then? These are rhetorical questions that begin the poem The Good Morrow, where the poet is thinking, like, what were we doing before we actually met each other? So in the ending lines of the first stanza, the poet persona goes on to answer his own questions, and he says it does not count. Whatever it is they were doing before they met themselves doesn't matter. It was not real, but a dream. Then we'll move to the second stanza. Stanza 2 further describes the love that exists between the poet persona and his lover. He thinks their love is so perfect that they don't need to watch each other like out of fear. They trust themselves. They trust the love they have for each other. So they don't need to watch themselves out of fear. Everything they do is controlled by their love, which is so great that it can turn, a little room into the world. The poet says he's content with his lover by his side. As long as his lover is with him, he's not interested in anything else. In the second stanza, we see lines like, let's see discoverers to new words have gone, let maps to words on words have shown. The poet persona is not interested. He thinks that with his lover, he's okay. So he's only interested in the world that they will share together and exploring themselves. So let's see discoverers discover what they like. Let maps show that other words exist. He's not interested. He's content just with the world he shares with his lover. In the third and final stanza of the poem, the poet persona gazes into his lover's eyes and sees his reflection in there, knowing fully well that her reflection is also in his eyes. So their heartfelt connection is evident, is visible on their faces. He then compares them to hemispheres, meaning they are half words that perfectly complement each other, perfectly complete each other. And he even thinks that they are better hemispheres than the earth. The earth has the northern and the southern hemisphere, but there's cold from the north and there is darkness when the sun sets in the west. So he thinks that they are hemispheres that complete each other. Without that, so they are better than the actual earth. Then the poet persona also believes that death is caused by imbalance. So as long as him as long as their love is perfectly matched, the love will not die. We see that in the last stanza. The poet believes that death is caused by imbalance. Towards the end, we see whatever dies was not mixed equally. So he believes that their love, as long as their love is equally matched, it will not die. The last line says, love so alike that none do slacking, none can die. So he believes that as long as their love is equal, perfect, it will not die. That's the summary of the poem, The Good Morrow. Now we look at the themes that the poem tries to explore. And the major theme is that of love. The entire poem is a poem about love. The poet persona thinks that their lives were bland before they met. He then goes on to explain how great their love is. It is so great, it makes, a little room and everywhere. It makes them content in themselves. And it's so great, it can even avert death. So the entire poem is about love. Then we also have the theme of exploration. We also have the theme of exploration and adventure. The poem was written during the age of discovery. That should be from the 15th century to the 17th century. And the poet ensured that this was represented. In the second stanza, we see lines like, let's see discoverers to other words have gone, let maps to words or words have shown. So lines like that explores the theme of exploration and discovery, trying to capture that age of discovery that the poem was written in. Then we'll now look at the poetic devices. Poetic devices in the poem The Good Morrow. Rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is a question that an answer is not expected. So, and we said the poem begins with about three rhetorical questions. An example: were we not weaned until then? Rhetorical question. Then we also have allusion. Historical allusion, where the poet says, or snorted we in the seven sleepers then, is a historical reference to, the story of the seven sleepers who slept for years and finally woke up when what they were even hiding from was long over. So this is a historical reference. Then we also have hyperbole. Hyperbole is an over exaggeration. In the poem, we have makes one little room and everywhere. The poet is over exaggerating how content he feels with his lover. That one little room now becomes like as big as the world. So that's hyperbole. Then we have anaphora. Anaphora is a repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of sentences that are next to each other. In the last three lines of the second stanza, we have let's see, discoverers, to other words, let maps of words on words, then let us possess. So the repetition of let at the beginning of these three sentences that are next to each other is an example of the literary device anaphora. Then we also have enjambment. Enjambment or run online. Enjambment is simply occurs when the poet doesn't finish one thought in a particular sentence, but goes to the next sentence or next sentences to complete that thought. So we refer to that as enjambment. Example in the poem, the last stanza, we have where can we find two better hemispheres? You see, there's a comma, and the writer continues in the next line without code notes, or so that's an example of enjambment or run online. Then there's also rhyme scheme. The rhyme scheme for the poem is A B C C C. Each stanza contains 7 lines. So in the poem, the first line and the third line end with the same sound. The second line and the fourth line ends with the same sound. Then the last 3 lines too also contain the same sound. That's the rhyming scheme for the poem The Good Morrow. Now we answer some questions on it. So we attempt some past UTME questions on The Good Morrow. First, the central theme of the poem is love at first sight, undying love, mortal love, none of the above. Our answer becomes undying love. The central theme represented in the poem is that of undying love. Why does the poet persona reject traveling? A. He can't afford it. B. He has the whole world in his bedroom. C. He gets nauseated in cars and panicky on planes. D. His lover won't come with him because she hates road trips. Answer becomes he has the whole world in his bedroom. He's content just, being with his lover, being together. There's no mention of him not being able to afford it, or him getting nauseated, or his lover not coming with him in the poem. What we see there is that he has the whole world in his bedroom. Their love makes a little room and everywhere. Each stanza of the poem is written in dash. A sestet, B heptad, C quintain, tercet. Sestet is, a stanza of 6 lines, heptad of 7 lines, quintain of 5 lines, tercet of 3 lines. And since the poem contains 3 stanzas of 7 lines each, our answer becomes heptad. Each stanza of the poem is written in heptad. Which of the early Christian legends was referenced in the Good Morrow? 7 sisters, Saint Jerome in the desert, the 7 slippers, Saint Helena. The first stanza says, or snorted we in the 7 slippers then. So the Christian legends reference was the 7 slippers. Lastly, the poem was written by John Keats, John Osborne, John Marlowe, John Donne. The poem was written by English poet John Donne. So these past questions were called from the O3 Schools JAMB app. Do well to download the app and practice your way to your dream score. Thanks for watching.